Hello everybody! Today I've just been feeling kind of blah and like I do not have the mental capacity to talk in depth about what I've been reading, so I thought it would be a perfect day to do a book haul. I've been meaning to do this for a while. I've had books stacking up that I've been meaning to show you, so let's do that today. And let's not talk about how many of these I haven't read yet, because no, we're just not gonna go there. We're not gonna go there. These are all books that I've gotten in the first 2 months of this year, though a couple of them, I couldn't remember if I talked about them or not. They were Christmas gifts that kind of snuck in at the beginning of January, so I'm gonna mention them quickly here. So we'll start with those actually. So two of my Christmas gifts were these comics. I have volume 6 of Monstress, which is written by Marjorie and the artwork is by Takeda. I still haven't read volume 6. I've been meaning to, but I do need to reread volume 5 first. And this has just been hanging out on my nightstand saying, Rachel, why don't you just reread these one evening? And I haven't. But the series has gotten complex enough and the action is like really started to kick into gear that I can't just go into it cold anymore. I have to start rereading the previous volumes to remind myself of what's been going on. And it's worth it because it's really good and it's so pretty to look at. The other one that I got for Christmas is The Tea Dragon Festival by Kate O'Neill. This is the second in the Tea Dragon series. I do have the other two and I'm planning on rereading them all in one big binge. They are so pretty and heartwarming. I love them so much. I always look forward to whatever Kate O'Neill is going to do next. This next one, I'm just going to show you guys briefly. It is a big honkin' book, but I don't have that much to say about it because it's basically a reference work. This is the Fleece and Fiber Sourcebook, More Than 200 Fibers from Animal to Spun Yarn by Deborah, Robson, and Carol Ekarius. This is one of the go-to books in the spinning and fiber world, and it is just a bunch of research on sheep breeds and their wool and spinning it and like recommendations for how to turn it into yarn or what to do with it, all that fun stuff. Not the kind of book that you just read all the way through. It's much more of a reference work and I've already pulled it off the shelf and used it a couple of times. The rest of these books are not in any particular order, by the way. Everything has been very jumbled up. But these next two I just got in the mail. My friend Tara sent these to me when she was getting rid of them. These are the first two books in the Dark Days Club by Alison Goodman. I haven't mentioned these books literally in years, but the first one is the Dark Days Club and the second one is the Dark Days Pact. Oh my god, these are very shiny books, and it is very sunny today. There is a third one which I keep meaning to read, and I actually grabbed these off of my friend Tara when she was getting rid of them because I still want to read the third book and I think that I will really enjoy rereading these, so why not add them to my personal library and read them at my leisure when I feel like it. But I remember loving these books. They're basically, I think they're like Regency era supernatural fantasy about a young woman who discovers she has the ability to like see and fight demons or something, and it was fantastic. I loved them, especially the second book, so I really should reread them and finish off the trilogy. Next up is Akata Woman by Nnedi Okorafor. I did read this in January. A buddy read it with my friend Nicole. We both really enjoy these books. So this is actually the third book in the Instabidi Scripts series that began with Akata Witch and Akata Warrior. These are my favorite books by Nnedi Okorafor. I'm pretty sure that's my decision now. These are my favorites. And they're basically like middle grade into young adult fantasy about a Nigerian American albino girl who discovers that she has magical abilities. She is a leopard person, and her journey discovering her magic, learning it, and becoming a woman, you know, becoming a very powerful person. I love the characters, I love the setting, I love the world, and I love the journey that all these characters are going on as they grow up. It's been fantastic, and I was really happy to hear that there will probably be more books in the series. I kind of wondered if Akata Woman would be the last one. The way that it ends, it could be, but no, there's room for more in the future according to Okorafor. Next is The Dragon Waiting by John M. Ford. This is one of the Tor Essentials titles, which I have been, ogling these since they were announced, but this is the first one that I've gotten. So John M. Ford is an interesting character. I mean, literally, I think that he was a very interesting, eccentric person. But a couple of years ago, there was kind of this like journalistic piece on rediscovering what happened with Ford's literary legacy after he died. I had never heard of him at all, but he was, I guess, very well known and well respected, and maybe a pretty prolific author in the SFF world. But after he died, all of his work kind of got caught up in his estate, and maybe the fact that he didn't have, a will or a plan for what would happen to his intellectual property, I guess. So a lot of his books just disappeared. And then somebody started investigating this and found out what happened with his family, and they've been starting to reprint a bunch of his works. And The Dragon Waiting is one of these. This is a fantasy novel, and I know one other of his books has been re-released as well, and I think 2 more are coming out later this year. And I'm kind of thinking I might just dive into them and kind of like spotlight John M. Ford novels this year, because I am very curious about his work. So I got this for myself. Let's read what's on the back of it, because I don't know anything about this book. It says, in a snowbound inn high in the Alps, 4 people meet who will alter fate. A noble Byzantine mercenary, a female Florentine physician, an ageless Welsh wizard, and Sforza, the uncanny duke. Together they will wage an intrigue-filled campaign against the might of Byzantium to secure the English throne for Richard, Duke of Gloucester, and make him Richard III. And it also says, available for the first time in nearly 2 decades. It is a masterpiece of blood and magic. Very interesting. I don't know, I'm gonna go into this one pretty cold and just experience my first John M. Ford novel for what it is, and hopefully it will knock my socks off. One of my anticipated books of the year is Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi. This is kind of a prequel to Pet, and it follows Bitter, who is the mother of Jam, the protagonist of Pet. She is an artist and I think kind of a revolutionary, and the things that she paints might like come alive or something. I don't remember that much about Bitter as a character from Pet, but I know I am extremely excited to get to this. I really, really loved Pet, and I'm hoping that this will have a lot of the same vibes. Next is something a little bit different. This is Una Arruga en el Tiempo, la novela gráfica. This is the graphic novel version of Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time by Hope Larsen, translated into Spanish. I have read and adored A Wrinkle in Time many times throughout my life. Madeleine L'Engle was hands down one of my favorite authors as a kid. And I have also read the English version of the graphic novel adaptation. And I think it was Shannon from That So Po who mentioned she had a copy of this, and when I realized it existed in Spanish, I was like, I should get that. I should try to read an entire book in Spanish, and reading something that I am familiar with, that I also like have access to the English version of, might be a good first attempt at reading an entire book in Spanish. Though in general, I'm kind of leaning towards getting more Spanish materials that are not translations from English, but like the original Spanish books. But anyway, this is what I got, and I will hopefully read this in the first half of the year and get that under my belt. I'm not great in Spanish. I just want to emphasize this. I've always been best with reading comprehension rather than speaking ability, and this is what I've been trying to regain, is my reading comprehension, because I really want to be able to read things in Spanish. That is my dream. So working towards that a little bit more concretely this year. Last year I discovered John Wyndham's work and I was really impressed. I read his 3 novels that are in the SF Masterworks line. line, and then I decided to just keep buying his books in these other editions. These are the Penguin editions from the UK. So I have read The Chrysalids, The Day of the Triffids, and The Midwich Cuckoos, and these two are Trouble with Lichen, which I think multiple people recommended to me, and then The Kraken Wakes, which seems to be one of his other well-known ones that a lot of people mention. There are a couple of others that have that are from this like matching set that I might get, but I'm gonna try to pace myself a little bit in getting them. So yeah, more John Wyndham in my future, and hopefully they'll be just as good as the other three that I have read. I will try to talk about these more in depth when I've actually read them, because I've been really surprised at how many people have come out of the woodwork who are excited about John Wyndham since I did my videos on those books. So I will try to actually talk about these when I've read them. A little bit of some older SF there. Speaking of older science fiction, I got myself a couple more of the SF Masterwork titles because I cannot resist, especially when they are on sale. So I got myself a copy of The Door into Summer by Robert Heinlein. I am not actually a huge Robert Heinlein fan, but The Door into Summer I have read and I actually really liked it. Like, I really enjoyed the story, so I decided to get a copy of this for my collection. The other one by him that's also in the SF Masterworks line that I really enjoyed is Double Star. I think that's the name of it. Yeah, Double Star. Once again, one of his older works, pre some of his really famous ones. Those tend to be the ones that I like more. So there is this one. This one involves like cryo-freezing people, a little bit of like pseudo time travel. There are some issues that I have with it, like the nudist colony thing. But other than that, it was a good story. And then the others I haven't read. I got Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. I have read The Man Who Fell to Earth. I did a review of that one, and I liked it. I was really intrigued by Tevis's work. So I have Mockingbird, and I'm also going to try to read The Queen's Gambit. And no, I have not watched the entire Netflix adaptation, but I will someday. But Mockingbird is probably next on my list. I don't know what it's about. Let's read the back of this one. In a dying world where humans are drugged and lulled by electronic bliss. Wow, that one hits differently now. Where there is no art, no literature, and there are no children, where some would rather burn themselves alive than endure, Spawforth is the most perfect machine ever created. But his only desire is the impossible, to cease to be. Yet there is hope in this bleak, depressing time, hope in the passion and joy that a man and a woman discover in love and in books. Hope for the future, hope even for Spawforth. So is this about an AI? Okay, I'm rather interested now what this is actually about. And the last one that I have to show you is Riddley Walker by Russel Hoban. This is one of those odd one out hardcovers in the SF Masterworks line. I think it's out of print. I had to get this one secondhand, and it was not super cheap. I don't know much about this book. It's been on my list to track down because it's been out of print and because I think it's kind of infamous for having really weird spelling, somewhat like Fearsome Engine by Ian Banks, which I have read and it was okay. But yes, just reading the bit on the back here, it does have some odd spelling and like speech in it. So I don't know. It just says on the back, Riddley Walker, orphaned, outcast, and alone, journeys through post-apocalyptic England, telling his tale in language which reflects the decayed world around him. When was this published? I feel like this is an older book. I don't know, it's only from like 1980. Not as old as I thought it was. This is one that I haven't heard anything about. I've never heard anybody talk about this book, and I only know it exists because it is in the SF Masterworks line. So, which kind of tells you what the point of the SF Masterworks line is to bring into print some of these older things that might have been forgotten. All right, and the last couple of books that I have to show you are more Discworld hardcovers. As I think I've mentioned in previous book hauls, I have been slowly upgrading my motley assortment of Discworld books to the official hardcover editions that are all so pretty and they all match and they're very, very beautiful. So the four that I recently treated myself to, we have my favorite Discworld novel of all time, my favorite Terry Pratchett novel of all time, Going Postal. I always really loved the Industrial Revolution sub-series books. This is one of them. This is the first in the like Moist von Lipwig trilogy, and it is just absolutely my favorite. I've read it multiple times. Then we have Sorcery, which I also remember really enjoying. Pyramids, which I don't recall much of the story of this one, but I remember thinking it was hilarious. I mean, Terry Pratchett is always very amusing, but I remember like getting the jokes in this one and thinking it was great. And then the itty bitty one is Eric, which I don't remember anything about. I didn't even remember that it was this tiny. I think this is one of the very first Discworld novels, and I think it might be a take on Faust or something. It's from 1990. I don't know. When I read the bulk of the Discworld novels back when I was around 14 or 15, I binge read them like one a day over a couple of weeks, I think. That's my memory of it, at least. So a lot of them ran together, and I didn't read them in any good order, so I missed a lot of the connections between the books and stuff. But anyway, someday I will do a big reread, and I will have these lovely editions to do that with, rather than all of my itty bitty paperbacks. So those are all of the physical books that I have acquired recently. Now let's quickly talk about the ebooks and audiobooks. There are not very many of those this time. So first up, I have volume 2 of Steeple by John Alison. This comic is about like a vicar who fights demons in this like seaside village in England. And then some other people arrive in town and find out about this and are helping him. And it's a kind of crazy. I really enjoyed the first volume, but I thought it was a standalone, and I was like, why did this end so abruptly? But there is a volume 2. It turns out that Alison has been doing this as a web series, and then it's being printed as a comic later. So I just grabbed this when it was available because I was reminded it existed and was like, I should read that. And have I read it yet? Not yet. There is also The Missing Page by Cat Sebastian. I've already read this and raved about it. This is historical queer romance with a major mystery element. I've also talked about the first book, Hither Page. These books are so good, just go out and read them. And I really, really loved The Missing Page, so I hope there will be another book eventually. Then for audiobooks, I've already read and talked about The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. This is a nonfiction book about state of the food industry and kind of like sourcing the ingredients for a couple of meals and the research that Michael Pollan did for that. This has been on my to-read list for many, many years, mainly because it covers topics that I and my family have been interested in for a long time. And it was a little bit underwhelming in the sense that I was already very familiar with a lot of what Pollan had to say, but it was still very good, and I liked it for what it was, you know? Then the other 2 audiobooks that I have that I haven't listened to yet, I did get Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I was very torn about whether I wanted to try reading this one in print or listening to the audiobook, and I decided to just get the audiobook because it's in such high demand at the library that I can never keep it for very long, and I feel like I need to take my time with it. So this is set aside for whenever I want something slow and probably very contemplative to listen to. And then there is To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara. I have this from Libra FM's early access program, and I'm actually trying to read it in print first. It's a massive book, it's very complicated, and I wanted to read it with my eyeballs first and then switch to the audiobook once I kind of figured out what it is. I don't listen to a lot of really hefty, complex fiction on audiobook. I can, but it's not my first choice. But anyway, anyway. I will get around to this eventually. I've actually started reading the book. I just haven't dedicated a lot of time to fully immersing myself in it. And that is it for this book haul. Do let me know if you have read any of these, or if you want to. Let me know what I should pick up next. I need a little bit of encouragement. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back to talk to you again soon about more books. And until then, bye.